"Release me?" Ares Targaryen howled those words, alongside a slew of obtuse obscenities and other vile vitriol that shan't be spoken within these pages, at his captors as he threw a fresh fit and flailed against his restraints. All for naught. His shackles held, and he succeeded only in smashing his already wounded face against an unyielding bars of his cell, injuring himself yet further. Although he was lacking a leg and an arm besides, he had nevertheless been chained to the wall in a humiliating fashion and left to rot in the dark with naught but a single torch hung before his face. All the while he seethed. Did they have any idea who he was? He was the king, he was the dragon, and yet they had caged him like some common pauper, the gall of it all. To make matters worse, his captors had struck him across the face, cut his beard, then lopped off his ring finger for good measure signet ring, and all to be sent back to King's Landing as a warning. Perhaps for ransom. Likely the latter, he mused in a fleeting moment of lucidity. And still, this infernal itching persisted. He could not even scratch himself with his bloody hand, for that hand was bound, and there was no one left in his retinue to attend to him. They were all dead, servants and knights all, Sir Gawain the Gaunt and Sir Jonathan Darry with them, slain in coldest blood when they moved to defend him. That left his remaining Kingsguard at a mere 4 now, since the untimely mysterious death of Sir Oswell went to illness a year prior, and the disappearance of Prince Lewin Martell not a year before that. Now only Sir Arthur Dane, Sir Gerald Hightwer, Sir Barristan Selmy, and last of all, certainly least in his addled mind, that pesky Lannister pup, Sir Jaime, yet remained. Useless, the lot of them. Couldn't do a damn thing unless he told him to. He tried to distract himself with those of his remaining guard, but that only left him further incensed. Traitors and turncoats everywhere he looked, failures within and without. Even in death they disobeyed. This was all their fault. Duskendale, accursed Duskendale, damnable, detestable Duskendale. Denies Darkly had personally invited him to come to his keep to hear his petition, and like any good mad king, he had graciously granted his request. Yes, he'd come here in good faith, only to be promptly set upon by archers and knights the moment he and his were through the gates. His men lay dead in the yard, swords and crossbow bolts in their backs, before they even knew what was happening. Then he was taken. Now here he lay, imprisoned, going madder by the moment. He was loath to admit it, but perhaps Tywin had been right after all. He was a fool to come here with naught but 2 Kingsguard and a few attendants. Perhaps he should have abstained, unless... Was Tywin in league with them, the mastermind behind this scheme, the lion in sheep's clothing? Yes, of course, it all made sense now. This must be his doing. It had to be. The lion sought to remove the dragon from the board. He would accept no other explanation. A fresh paroxysm of agony jarred him back to reality most forcefully, reminding him of his torment and prompting another burst of festering rage. "I am the king," he howled, spittle spraying from yellow teeth. "I demand you release me at once." As though spurred by that very thought, the shadows seemed to come alive for a moment, and he could have sworn he saw countless eyes peering at him from the dark, limned by the torchlight. Green eyes, Lannister eyes, treacherous lion eyes. A man walked out of the shadows wearing a familiar face. Tywin's face, no, that wasn't quite right. Its features were indistinct. It both was and was not Tywin, but rather who he had once been. A younger man, a warmer man, back when things made sense, when life was so much simpler. He'd truly gone insane, hadn't he? The ghost of his past smiled as it strode towards Ares. When it spoke, its voice rippled through the halls of his memory. "Any man who must say, 'I am the king,' is no true king. I thought you would have learned that by now, my old friend." Men did not walk out of shadows. Even he wasn't so far gone as to think that. "No!" The king shied away from him, trying to shield his with his remaining hand and failing miserably. "You're not here, you're hiding under Casterly Rock. You can't be here, you're not real." The spectre paused before him. "Whether I am real or not is immaterial, the fault remains your own. You've blundered into this trap of your own accord, Ares." Blast, it even sounded like Tywin. Rage bubbled up in his heart at the implication. Ares snarled and spat at him, lone eye squinting into the gloom. "Mine. This is your doing. It's easy to blame me for everything these days, isn't it?" As he looked on, his worst friend turned fear began to walk circles around him, hands clasped behind his back. "If the taxes aren't done properly, blame Tywin. If your son can't find a bride, blame Tywin. If the realm rebels, blame Tywin." He chuckled darkly, as the true Tywin never would. "But I had no part in this, Ares. I had nothing to do your body failing you, nor was I involved with the Darklings, though I admit," he thumbed his chin, considering, "my house will certainly benefit from their stupidity. You, however." Tywin struck like a snake and closed the distance between them in an instant. A spectral hand seized Ares' ruined face and began twisting it from left to right, inspecting his disfigured visage as a butcher might a pig before slaughter, or a lion about to put a dying dragon out its misery. He'd never been one to mince words. At length he scoffed and released him. "You will die down here, Ares?" The king stilled. If this was his own maddened mind telling him of his doom, he didn't want to hear it. "It will not be swift, nor will it be pleasant." Yet the ghost of former friend continued, unabated. "If your illness doesn't take you, then I expect the torturer's tools will. You'll likely lose some more fingers before the deed is done, perhaps your tongue." Ares hung his head and screamed anew into the floor. Tywin tutted at him, just as he had that one time he found him passed out with those whores on the street of Silk. "Best do that while you still can. You were a poor man, a poorer king, and your son will never so much as touch the Iron Throne one. He will die, as will your wife and any hope of your future. The Targaryens shall cease to exist by year's end, all because of you. The realm will move on, and you will be forgotten, like every other mad king before you." Ares began to weep into the flagstones. Tywin quirked a leonine brow down at him, his scorn palpable. "Really now? Tears from you? Compose yourself. You are the king for however many days you have left. The least you can do is die with dignity, not in a puddle of tears and your own excrement." Ares wailed incoherently. Tywin sighed. "I shall leave you to it then." A hand patted his head, brushing his thinning hair in a parting caress. "Farewell, old friend, we won't meet again." Ares surged upright in a fit of panic, sanity peeking through curtains of his madness. "Tywin, no, don't leave me alone." Not in his wretched place when he looked up. Tywin was nowhere to be seen. Long gone, or rather he had never been. Something cracked in the back of his addled mind like broken stained glass beneath a hammer. Ares slumped against his chains and began to snicker. Cackle. Giggle now. Seconds bled into minutes after that, and soon hours became days. He had no way of knowing how much time passed, but with it, his tenuous grasp on reality became more untethered by the moment. Fact and fiction began to blur even further. Misery bled into mania as the rats nibbled at his toes and lice infested his hair. He ate bread when it was given to him and drank water, each provided once a day. He was being kept alive, but only just and for what he knew not. All the while, rage burned within him. Burn them all. Burn. Yes, that was what he would do once he escaped from this place. Burn them in their homes, burn them in their beds, burn them until they were dead. No, even after they were dead. Burn their bones. Even when his jailers finally grew weary of his ranting and gagged him forcing a wet sock into his mouth, he continued to rant and rage. Ares howled angrily against the gag. MRRRM, HRRRM, MHRRRMMPH. He would burn them all, burn them, Alal. King Ares has been kidnapped. To call what followed calm would have been a farce. It was anything but chaos ensued. Everyone started shouting. Tywin, to his credit, weathered this storm as he had done so countless before. He stood fall, hands clasped behind his back, face outwardly reflecting none of the concern he felt within as everyone railed at him, demanding explanations. Was he not upset? Was he not concerned? Was he not alarmed? Foolishness. Of course he was concerned. How could he not be? The timing of Ares' disappearance was inopportune at best, downright disastrous at worst. So many of his plans hinged on having his former friend still sitting the Iron Throne when the rebellion began. For that sorry sod to simply vanish from King's Landing and be kidnapped by parties unknown was ... concerning, to say the last. Should the old fool manage to get himself killed, Rhaegar would ascend to take his place, and that, as a Tully would say, was an entirely different kettle of fish. Ares could not be allowed to perish just yet. Rhaegar was infinitely more capable than his father, and moreover, well-liked by the realm. It was one thing for a lion rebel against a diseased dragon stricken by madness, and another matter entirely to face one in its prime. Tywin knew how the mind of Ares worked. He could even predict the crazed king to an extent. Despite his madness, he had been a decent, if eccentric man once upon a time. Once. Now he was a mad thorn in his side, one who delighted in tormenting him at every turn. The sooner he plucked him, killed his son, and planted Nathaniel atop the Iron Throne with Rhaela as queen to legitimize his rule, the better. Rhaegar would be far harder to dislodge should he ever rise to kingship and therefore mustn't be allowed to ascend in the first place. Some might say such thoughts were treacherous. Perhaps they were. What of it? Tywin had been loyal, a good friend. And what did that friendship gain him? Misery. Ares had betrayed him long ago, first with the horrors he inflicted upon Rhaela, then in trying to take Joanna from him, and in countless acts of petty spite since. Such were the acts of neither friend nor a king, but a madman jumping at shadows. History was littered with countless corpses like his, each mad or cruel in their own way. Meager, Baylor, Egon the Unworthy, to name a few. Ares would join them in due time, but such an effort would take time, and they must be careful in the meantime, which meant not rushing headlong into a trap without proper preparation. Nathaniel and his prospective brides-to-be did not understand this. They possessed neither the age nor the experience that he did. They were angry, confused, demanding answers, lost in the heat of the moment. It was understandable. They were young and passion ran hot in them. As such, waited until they'd shouted themselves hoarse. Only then did he speak. As hand of the king, I have been recalled to the Red Keep by the queen to remedy this indiscretion until such a time as the king is found. He looked to his son. Nathaniel will accompany me. Even the dragon seemed to take silent note of those words. He had no doubt the intelligent beasts understood them. Nathaniel, for his part, clapped a hand to his forehead and sighed, utterly incredulous. Why, Tywin baited the hook. Rayla was insistent. All semblance of protest died. The ladies looked amongst themselves and muttered crossly at the mention of her grace, but that was undoubtedly the ghost of a smile upon his heir's proud visage just now. He had no doubt the young man would accept the queen's command, if only to finally meet her in the flesh after all these years. Might he have something to do with this? Tywin studied his son's face for any sign of deception, and found none. He didn't think Nathaniel would or could conspire to kidnap the king, but he had been away dealing with the last lingering Ironborn raiders. He wouldn't put it past him to try something, not with everything he'd inflicted upon Ares already. But no, his son looked just as shocked as the rest. He clearly wasn't a part of this. Joanna elbowed him ever so gently, preventing him from getting lost in his thoughts once again, and well that he didn't at that. Because the Stark girl was about to make quite a scene, Lyanna had stepped to Nathaniel's side and seized his right hand. I will go. Elia stepped to his side and latched onto his left. As shall I, brave girls. Brave, but also very foolish. You will do no such thing. He cut the legs out from under their argument with a quelling look before their words could take root. The queen asked for Nathaniel and I alone. Furthermore, neither of you can be seen at his side in court. Rhaegar will surely attempt to take one of you. Lyanna and Elia looked to one another and blanched. Cersei took the opportunity to wrap both arms around Nathaniel from behind. Placing her chin upon her brother's shoulder, she opened her mouth to protest. Joanna rounded on their daughter with a stern scowl. No! Cersei closed her mouth, released Nate, and stepped back. Truly, his wife could command their daughter in ways he could not. Tyrion chuckled ruefully. He has you there, sister. Cersei glowered green daggers at him. If looks could kill, his youngest son would be a pile of smoldering ash upon the floor. You cannot go for your own safety, dear ones. Joanna deftly snatched the reins of the conversation from him as she stepped to their son and reached out, carefully disentangling him from the trio of troublesome maidens one by one. Rhaegar aside, someone must remain here and look after the dragons. No, Lyanna stomped a foot sullenly. Anyone can do that. Not just anyone, Joanna corrected her gently, steering the conversation toward her desired outcome. Your dragon only listens to you, does he not? The same can be said for Elia and Cersei. Your beasts are young. They will surely rebel if you leave them unattended. They may get hurt, or worse, accidentally reveal themselves to the world. Is that what you want? Tyrion can watch them. Elia shrugged one shoulder. The lizards like him? Mostly, the boy scoffed. While I appreciate the vote of confidence, I'd rather not become Dragon Chow. Seemed his son had a spine. Good. He'd need it in the coming days, but Joanna had found an opening now, and like any Lannister, she pressed it ruthlessly. Do you have such little faith in Nathaniel? The trio shook their heads. Then trust in him. He's defied worse odds before, has he not? Nathaniel, for his part, wisely kept his mouth shut and let Joanna talk, no doubt realizing what she was planning. In no time at all, she managed to talk them down. Kurama huffed audibly, expelling smoke from his nostrils. Clearly he understood her aim. For once, Tywin found himself inclined to agree with the dragon. His wife had a way with words that he did not. Sure enough, the girls eventually subsided with mutinous looks. He would have them watch tonight, but didn't deny her words. But then, just when he thought the matter'd settled, Nymeria stepped up silently, hands clasped at her waist. She said nothing to Tywin, she simply stared. He immediately made to refute her as well out of habit, then paused and reconsidered her. No, not just her, but rather the peerless potential possessed. Having a faceless girl, now a woman among their retinue would be beneficial. If things went south, as he suspected might, she would be another sword to cut them a path to freedom, or a shield for his son. He did not say such things aloud, naturally. Nate might take offense to the idea of losing one of his lady loves. Very well. He granted her a grim nod of acceptance. You may accompany us. Nymeria bowed her head and sketched a curtsy. She'd gotten better at those. Thank you, my lord. Cersei threw an absolute fit. Then I shall go as well. Tywin rounded on her with an aggravated growl, his patience at an end. Will you now, and do you also possess the means to change your face at will? Can you throw a dagger like an arrow, slit a man's throat before he knows you're there? No. When his daughter flushed, he pressed his advantage. Then the matter is closed. You will remain here with Lyanna and Elia. She balled her fists and railed at him. This is unfair. Life is unfair. He thundered back at her, bringing her up short with a steely glare. If you lack the strength to pursue your goals, then strive to acquire it. I have acquired it. I've been training. She slashed a hand through the air at him, teeth bared in a rare snarl of defiance. But it's never enough, father, not for you. Ever, the words hit closer to home than he would have liked. Reflexively, his face closed down and he walled himself off from her. Guards, my daughter is tired. See her to her chambers. As ever, the silent guards of the stone garden nodded and moved to flank Cersei. For what little good it did, she snarled at them and stomped toward the stairs, skirts swirling. Tywin suspected he'd have to seal her in her room tonight lest she do something reckless. God save him from wild daughters. At length he looked to Nathaniel, idly noting that his son had followed Cersei's departure with a wistful expression. Best put a stop to that. There would be no heartfelt goodbyes there, not tonight. Pack your things, he commanded, drawing an incredulous look from his heir. We ride within the hour. Not true technically, but he didn't wish to give him and Cersei the chance to conspire something. The journey will take some time. I do not expect it to be a quick one. He injected a not-so-subtle warning in that. There was no need to rush, not just yet. What was important was that they were seen leaving Casterly Rock with all due haste. The dawn would come soon. It would be a bitterly cold ride so early in the morn, but a necessary one. If the spider had any of his little birds in the rock, he would report that they'd left almost immediately upon receiving the raven, and no one would be the wiser. Nathaniel, for his part, finally voiced the thoughts on his mind. It could be a trap. It very well could, yet we've no choice but to spring it. To refuse the Queen's command would see us branded as traitors. His heir laughed ruefully as he scratched his cheek. Yeah, she'd be pretty angry if we refused. Angrier at you, I'd wager. Belatedly, he remembered another, smaller scroll that had come with the Queen's pleading missive, one directed to Nathaniel, one he'd not yet opened. It had been a rare moment of decency on his part, if only because he suspected what said scroll contained. Here. He passed it off to his still chuckling son. Her Grace directed this to you. Nathaniel opened it, and the laughter immediately lodged in his throat. He stood there, reading its contents for the better part of a minute, and made not a sound. Tywin had an inkling why. As he looked on, his son's face flushed a brilliant shade of Lannister red to the very tips of his ears. Joanna noticed, and a slow, satisfied smile spread across her face. Don't keep us in suspense, dear. What does it say? Their son coughed into a fist, averting his gaze. She asks that I arrive with all due haste. Her grin grew. Surely it says more than that? Nathaniel promptly hid the letter behind his back, but that only exposed it to Nymeria's questing eyes. She darted in like her namesake, plucked it from his grasp, then skittered backward out of reach before he could think to stop her. Naturally, that meant Lyanna and Elia had to take a peek, and in no time at all, the three of them were crooning over its contents like the trio of lovelorn maidens they were. Oh my, that clever minx. She's not even trying to be subtle anymore. Nathaniel complained and tried to wrest it from their grasp, only for the ladies to pass it among themselves, giggling. In shorter order, his son found himself teased incessantly as they recited verses from what, apparently was a rather pretty poem of all things. She called you her lion, her dearest, her one true love. After a letter like that, I want to bed her myself. I can't even be angry with her. A curious pang tugged at Tywin's heart. Oh, Rayla. Even after all these years, she still loved her poetry. Joanna sidled up to him as the quartet squabbled amongst themselves, likely intending to get a look at the letter herself later, and laid a pale hand on his arm for comfort. Surely it won't be just the two of you? Nymeria coughed pointedly behind her, drawing a bemused laugh from his wife. Three, rather, she amended ruefully with a glance her way. You'll be taking a great risk as it is, and to go alone. Certainly not, he was no fool. They'd bring a score of guards with them, not mere bannermen, mind you, proper knights and warriors of Casterly Rock all. Good men. Loyal men, strong men, a few hundred would do. Not enough to empty the rock of all her defenses, but enough to see them protected if this was in fact some mad scheme by Ares. But if by some chance this was a genuine plea for help from Rayla, if Ares truly had been taken by some unknown entity, if King's Landing was truly vulnerable, then there was only one thing for it. The lion would pounce. From her window, Cersei saw a great host ride away from Casterly Rock in the cold dawn light. She settled down to watch, chin in her hands, a lone tear rolled down her cheek. Be safe, foolish little brother. They made good time, not stupendous time or magnificent time by any means, just good. Not nearly good enough for Naruto's liking, but time all the same. It galled him to move so slowly when he knew could rush to the capital himself, but he understood the necessity of it all. If he would rush there himself, he might be. Well, not captured, he wasn't a fool, but it would certainly cause a stir, and right now he didn't need the extra attention. In truth, he would have preferred a full-on sprint, but they simply couldn't reach King's Landing in a day. He'd long since grown accustomed to moving at his own pace, but marching with an armed force posed challenges of its own, logistics and the like. He understood the reason they were bringing this many men better safe than sorry, but horses could only move so fast before they dropped dead. Since they hadn't exactly planned for this summons, there were no rest stops with fresh steeds for them, which hobbled them further still. They made camp that night just shy of the Westerlands come nightfall, and what a camp it was. No mere campfires and sleeping on the ground for the lords of Lannister, no, no, no. As he looked on and helped in some cases, a number of large red-on-gold tents were soon erected, and much to his annoyance, his was one of the largest. Proper posh, Clegane had remarked upon the sight of it, and he found himself inclined to agree. Now Tywin faced him across a table yet again, leaving two of them poring over a map once more in the flickering candlelight. He would have found it nostalgic if he weren't so distracted at the moment, because you see, Nymeria had found yet another new face for herself. In place of her normal visage and pale locks, she donned the likeness of a pale maiden with long ebony hair and bewitching blue eyes. Blue eyes. He didn't want to know where she'd gotten that face from. Some things were better left unknown. What was the saying Cersei had grown so fond of these last 2 years? Take refuge in audacity? Yes, that was the one. It was a lovely disguise. Perhaps even too much so. One of the lads had already tried to pay for her services and received a black eye for his trouble. She'd not left his side since. Not that he blamed her. If things went poorly, these might be their last days together. And she was no one's whore. Her eyes caught his, glinting in the candlelight as she shot him a lopsided smile. Her arms tightened around him, a reminder that she had him all to herself. No Lyanna nor Elia and Cersei to share him with. The last time they'd truly been alone was the famed drowning of the Greyjoys. Yes, the bloody massacre of an entire noble house at the hands of a Lannister had once more inexplicably found its way into song, and they'd seldom had proper pillow talk since. He couldn't blame her for being frisky. Pay attention. Tywin apparently could. The pointed rebuke snapped Naruto back to attention faster than any blow, sharper than any blade. Tywin never needed to strike his children. His words and his approval were weapon enough. Nymeria made a point of holding onto him regardless. Tywin tutted and shook his head, but didn't demand that she release him. He almost thought he glimpsed a faint smile there upon his face, flickering in the candlelight. Worse than I was with your mother? Nymeria huffed. He was mine first. So you say, however, there is a time and place for such things. Control yourself, or I shall see the two of you separated for the duration of this journey. She subsided with a sigh. Understood, my lord? Father looked back to him, eyes sharp. You understand the plan, then? Naruto chucked, hiding a smile behind another drink of watered-down wine. It warmed his blood, but wasn't enough to dull his thoughts. Not yet, at least. Naturally. If we're ambushed on the road to King's Landing, I'm to take half of the men and ride back to Casterly Rock with all due haste, garrison it against our enemies, and call our banners. And if we aren't attacked, Tywin pressed, making certain he understood. Naruto rolled his eyes. Then our troops will garrison in the Red Keep until such a time as they needed to be thrown against whomever took Ares. We've been over this. A rare look of approval flickered across his father's face. You've thought this through, then? Of course I have. He took another drink to settle his nerves. This is all I've been thinking about since sunrise. At his arguing, they'd brought some 300 men, with accompanying servants and supplies besides. The armies of King's Landing easily outnumbered their current force by large, but then again, they weren't here to take King's Landing now, were they? As such, they were arriving as friends. The gates would open wide to them. They would be hailed as heroes, those who answered the queen's call and came to aid her in her darkest hour. Had they intended to sack the city, they could easily do so. But they wouldn't this time. Tywin was hand of the king. In the absence of Ares, he commanded true power in the capital, with Rayla after him as queen. Rhaegar, wherever he was, whatever he was up to, would have a say in matters naturally, but it wouldn't be the final say. No, that fell to Nathaniel. He blinked, shaking the cobwebs out of his head. Maybe the wine was affecting him after all, because he hadn't realized Tywin father was staring at him with such an expectant expression. "Heed my words," he cautioned him. "Rayla has ever been a passionate woman. Ares may have quenched her fire for a time, but you, I believe, have banked her coals and reignited her flame. If you wish to take her once we reach the city, now is the time to say so." Nymeria tensed against him. Heat speared up the back of Naruto's neck like wildfire. He'd rather bathe in the substance than have this conversation, least of all with Nymeria present. But needs must, he supposed. "What you're suggesting," Tywin silenced him with a query of his own. "Do you love her?" "Yes, undoubtedly." The reply came immediately. "Don't think for a moment that I feel otherwise." He was, well, fond of Rayla. She'd been one of the first he truly revealed himself to in his entirety, memories and all, with Nymeria taking a close second. Lyanna and the rest had come after. Even now he sensed a kindred spirit in her, one longing to be free from the cycle of suffering she'd been trapped in, a bird longing to break free of her cage. And he would set her free, one way or another, even if he had to burn down the rest of the Targaryen dynasty to do it. Tywin saw the gleam in his eyes and quietly acknowledged it with a nod of his own. "Go," he waved a dismissive hand at him and Nymeria, surprising them both. "Rest, if you can. We've a long ride ahead of us. The two of you may do as you wish in the evenings until we reach King's Landing, but be quiet about it." Nymeria needed no further encouragement. The moment he finished, she seized his wrist and all but dragged him out of Tywin's tent towards their own. The hound saw them coming a ways off and pulled the partition aside with a knowing look, sketching a sarcastic bow as he did so. Naruto glowered at him. "Not a word." Clegane only chuckled. That was a word." Nymeria didn't give him a chance to banter. Her grip bit into his arm as she hauled him inside. The moment they were alone, truly alone, she removed her false face and quickly disrobed, baring herself to him in all her glory. He had neither the time nor the inclination to ask why. She closed the distance between him, threw her arms around him and all but tackled him to the bed. There was a hunger to her kisses he noticed, a desperate air as she fumbled at his clothes. It was unlike her. "Hey," he reached up for her, trying to calm her. "What's wrong?" She unbuttoned his tunic, fingers dancing over the buttons. "Everything's going to change, isn't it? The king's gone missing, the realm is fraying at the seams, soon it will all come undone." He grimaced as she helped him shuck his shirt. It already has." The moment he was clear of it, she kissed him again, tongue ruthlessly plundering his mouth. He saw stars for a moment and was tempted to give him, but concern won the day. Bereft of his tunic though he was, he still had his trousers, which means she couldn't get what she wanted quite yet. Sitting up, he planted both hands on her hips and drew her back. "What's wrong?" She was silent for a long moment. "I don't want everything to change. I never want to leave this tent." "Oh, Nymeria." She looked up at him, blinking through damp eyes. "Can't we go back?" He pulled her into his arms and kissed her forehead. "We both know the answer to that." She latched onto him, trembling. "I don't want to lose this moment, or you." On that they were in complete agreement. "Nor I you." "Promise a woman, promise me you won't die." He winced at the words. "You know I can't." She slapped his chest. "You must." "I can't." Anger blazed in her eyes, and he wondered in that moment if she might leave. Instead, she seized his trousers with one hand and reached out to him with the other. "Whatever promises you make to the Dragon Queen, whatever oaths you give, promise me this. Promise we'll never part." Still she held out her hand to him, and belatedly finally he realized exactly what it was she wanted. His threaded his fingers within hers and held tight. "I can promise that much, you know." Nymeria tore off his trousers and pushed him back down. They didn't get much sleep that night. Pycelle opened the city gates for them. There was a certain irony to be had in that, Naruto supposed. It almost felt like destiny, you know. They'd ridden hard and it had taken them weeks, but here at last they had arrived. The doddering old Meister shuffled forward to greet them, feigning weakness and senility as always. Naruto let him exchange perfunctory greetings with the old coot. His gaze was elsewhere, searching, assessing for any sign of danger, weakness, any sign of threat. Instead, he found something else entirely, or rather someone, because there, standing behind Pycelle, guarding the old Meister. Was that? Ha, it really was. Naruto paused. Blinked now, it had been a long while, hadn't it? Grinning, he all but threw himself off his horse with a delighted cry and started forward, heedless of Pycelle's protest. Jaime! He almost didn't recognize the man in that armor. He was taller, face leaner, but that confident smirk remained, as did his eyes. He looked tired. His time in the Red Keep had worn him through. But he was still his brother, his big brother, the man he hadn't seen in years. Jaime, for his part, paused as well when he saw him, blinked now, an almost rueful smile crossing his weary face. Gods, you've gotten tall, Naruto laughed, quietly incredulous. And you look almost exactly the same, he lied. What horrors had this place inflicted upon his poor brother? Laughter was his reward for the lie. Well, we can't all age gracefully, little brother. Naruto lurched forward. Jaime met him halfway, as always. They moved in near unison and collided in a fierce embrace. It felt good, no better than good. He'd taken Jaime for granted until quite suddenly he was gone. And it was wonderful to see him again. He just didn't have the words for that right now. Jaime, however, had a whisper for his ear as he patted his back. She's waiting for you, Naruto gulped. Rayla. Naruto couldn't wait to see Rayla. Unfortunately, he had to delay for several reasons. Royalty, the realm, responsibilities, to name a few of them. He hated it. Part of him wanted nothing more than to say the hells with it and meet her anyway, consequences be damned. But he couldn't. If he went straight to the Queen's chambers after a long journey and was seen, he would be, this was King's Landing in the Red Keep no less. There were eyes everywhere. There'd be questions. Inquiries he was neither prepared to answer nor could, for that matter, without foolishly implicating himself in his father's conspiracy. So he would wait, for now. Regardless, he resolved to see her by the end of day, come what may. Absence made the heart grow fonder, or so they say, and right now his was feeling fond indeed. Within hours of arriving, Tywin called a gathering of Aerys' small council. Such was his right as Hand of the King. None could deny him, no matter how much they wished to. He supposed father could have forced them to meet him in the Tower of the Hand. That he hadn't was a mercy, one he likely wouldn't extend a second time. Naruto initially believed that would be his chance to slip away, a moment to risk a meeting while everyone was distracted with matters of the realm. Wrong on all counts. Much to his annoyance, Tywin declared that both he and Jaime would be present for said meeting. He didn't rightly understand why, but it wasn't an order he could refuse, not without showing his hand. Nor would he for that matter. One did not simply say no to Tywin Lannister. When asked, father merely told him to keep his eyes open, and thus it fell to him to make his own conclusions. Still, it was strange that he would have both him and Jaime still a Kingsguard for now present at such a pivotal meeting. And so the question persisted, lingering in the back like a wraith in the night. Speaking of sneaky things, Nymeria had slipped away soon after their arrival in Red Keep, donning a new face and leaving without so much as a word. She wasn't exactly gone per se. He could still sense her well enough in the lower levels of the keep, mind you, but her sudden absence after weeks spent together on the road. Well, it stung a bit, following father's orders no doubt, or maybe mother had given her another task to attend to. Whatever it was, it wouldn't be a massacre this time, he'd been clear on that, which brought him full circle to this moment. His thoughts centered themselves as they entered. Father entered first, flanked by Jaime on his left and himself on his right. Another power play, something to show the family united despite the disparity among them. He'd never seen this room before. In truth, it left much to be desired. Tacky was another word for it. Aerys did love his ostentatiously obnoxious displays, and this chamber was no exception. Everywhere he looked he saw black and red, both the banners and colors of House Targaryen on full display. The braziers burned both bright and hot, lending the room a stifling air. Thankfully they'd left the long table, and at many seats be. He didn't much relish the idea of sitting in some red oak chair stuffed with black cushions. Most of the seats were, to his amusement, already occupied by several people. Father had made them wait, a subtle power play on his part. Clever. From the moment Naruto entered the room and saw the state of the king's so-called small council, he began plotting murder. He couldn't help himself. He sensed everyone's ill intent bar two people toward him and responded accordingly. Assess. Observe them. Search for weaknesses. First and foremost, he noted the infamously bearded Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Gerald Hightower, known as the White Bull, sitting near the head of the table. The man was strong as an ox and blindly loyal to the Mad King, no matter how cruel and bloodthirsty Ares was. And there behind him, as though he needed a guard in these troubling times, stood Sir Barristan. Now wasn't this distinguished company? Grand Meister Pycelle was of course present, also one of the first to rise in greeting. And there beside him was Varys himself. He'd not met the Master of Whispers, but to his surprise, the bald man granted him a nod. The others he knew only distantly through name and reputation. This was his first time meeting them. First came the supposed Master of Ships, one Lord Owen Merryweather. A heavily jowled man, clad in the colors of his house, gray of hair with beady eyes and a piggish nose besides. Stout with thick arms and a bulging gut, his riding days long behind him. He was known at court as the Chuckler, given his only apparent skill was laughing at Ares's pathetic jokes. Not a bad man, but overall an ineffectual sycophant. Next came the Master of Coin, Carlton Chelsted, a craven-looking man, gaunt where Merryweather was fat with a thinning brown beard and dark hazel eyes. Supposedly he, too, was a strong supporter of the king over Rhaegar. He was nicknamed the Mace and Dagger due to his house's peculiar sigil. Third came the newly minded Master of Laws, Lord John Connington. No fancy clothes for him. He wore a brown tunic with matching trousers and boots. By the smell of him, he'd come straight from the practice yard. Both his hair and beard were a fiery red. He was proud, even arrogant person, a faithful friend to Rhaegar but prickly with others. Too young, too bold, and too eager for glory. The rest were sniping and sniveling souls all, with the exception of Varys and Pycelle, who he at least believed were loyal to the Lannisters. Mercifully, there was no sign of Wisdom Rossart, the king's pyromancer, which begged the question of where he was. Nor did Ares have a master of war. Yet, with luck he wouldn't have time to select one. Tywin wasted no time in taking his seat at the head of the table, forcing Naruto and Jaime to follow in his wake. Jaime, at least, was kind enough to let him stand on father's right, while he dutifully claimed the space at his left. He supposed it made for a pretty painting, but they weren't here for that now, were they? Jaime nudged him with an elbow and a rueful look besides. Naruto nudged him back with a smile of his own. Gods and laws be damned, but it was good to have him back. Barristan balked at the exchange. Sir Jaime, you should stand over here with Hightower and I Kingsguard forever, forswear the bonds of family. Naruto clicked his tongue and channeled a bit of Cersei's venom, so rarely seen these days. My brother will stand where he pleases. Barristan bristled in return, momentarily at a loss for words. Naruto felt his opinion of the knight sink lower. The man meant well, really. He was honestly a good soul, noble and true, but that hidebound honor of his was going to be the death of him. Soon, if he wasn't careful. Right now, the noble knight looked like he might protest further and make a mountain out of this molehill. Tywin didn't give him the chance. Where is the queen? A ripple of confusion passed through the small council as their concern turned elsewhere. In the end, it was Varys who answered first. She hasn't attended these meetings in quite some time, my lord. She shall. His words were both edict and command all in one. These matters concern her as well. Connington tutted derisively, his youth betraying him. She's a woman, she has no place here. Tywin stared Rhaegar's so-called friend down until he flinched. There are presently only 3 living Targaryens left in the world. Or have you forgotten? Naruto hummed inwardly. 4, counting Nymeria, given she was essentially a bastard, but he was hardly about to reveal her to this lot. Connington averted his gaze. I am aware. Then act like it. Tywin's rebuke cut deeper than any blade. You were chosen for this post because Rhaegar believed you have something to attribute to this council. Planting his hands upon the table, he leaned forward to regard the Master of Laws intently. Was he mistaken? No, my lord. Then refrain from making a fool of yourself again. The tiniest smile touched Varys' face. Pycelle was smirking as well, Naruto noticed. Tywin was in rare form today. He almost pitied these bastards. Almost. At length, father's gaze roved over the room, noting another absence. And where is the prince? Connington coughed into a fist and tried to rally, recovering from his earlier rebuke. The king Merryweather coughed wetly into a fist. He is not king so long as his father lives. The prince, Connington amended with a frustrated growl, is presently away dealing with matters of the realm. Tywin pressed the attack. Where? He did not say. Chelsted and Merryweather had nothing to add to that. Varys and Pycelle were likewise silent, nor did the Kingsguard have anything to add. Tywin gave the lot of them a look that would have frozen Blackwater Bay solid. The realm has known of Ares' absence for weeks. Collectively, you control more spies and informants than the rest of the world combined. Do you mean to tell me that none of you has any notion of where Rhaegar is? Chelstead grimaced. We are trying to find him, my lord. If looks could kill, he would have been ashes. Try harder. His rebuke given, father steepled his hands and shook his head, silently despairing of them all. To business, then, he said apropos of nothing. The king has been taken. How did this happen? Several members of the small council squirmed in their seats, none of them wanting to accept blame for this disaster. Varys, however, saw a chance to make himself useful and chimed in quickly. The Darklands of Duskendale are responsible for this, my lord. Tywin's gimlet glare fixed him in place. Explain. Varys did so happily. As I'm sure you know, Lord Denai's Darkland has refused to pay taxes for some time now, demanding a new charter for Duskendale and certain rights for its citizens. Tywin nodded subtly. I am aware. You mean to tell me that is the cause of this insanity? Naruto was also somewhat familiar with the story, having heard it from Tywin himself. Duskendale had once been an important port on Blackwater Bay and a seat of kings, had seen its wealth shrink and trade dwindle due to the growth of nearby King's Landing. Denai's Darkland, as Lord of Duskendale, obviously wished to halt this decline. He probably wanted to win himself a charter for Duskendale, similar as Dorne had received nearly a century before. It was preposterous, of course. Father had firmly rejected the proposal out of hand at the time, seeing neither reason nor right to award so many favors to such a small house. Such a refusing must have infuriated Lord Denai's, naturally. But to kidnap the king from the Red Keep? Something wasn't right. Chelstead reluctantly raised his voice, all but confirming his suspicions. His Grace went to Duskendale himself in good faith, with only 2 Kingsguard and a few servants in tow. His retinue was promptly slain and the king himself taken. Jaime grimaced. Ah, yes, that explain it. Naruto thanked his lucky stars that his brother hadn't been part of that entourage. Tywin tutted in agreement, albeit for a different reason. Allowing Aerys to visit Duskendale was insulting as it was stupid. I warned him not to go. Gerald Hightower spoke at the last. He is the king. It is not our place to judge him. Jaime tensed beside him. Naruto sensed a story there. You are correct that it is not your place. Tywin didn't give a chance to ask about it. He turned his wrath upon the Lord Commander. However, he gestured with one hand to the small council, regarding many of them with great scorn. It is our duty to prevent the king from making foolish decisions. This council has failed in that duty. Was he going to dismiss them all and select a new small council? This was a time of crisis. He would be well within his rights as hand of the king. Perhaps the lords of the small council realized it too, because they paled and hurried to offer their opinions on the matter. Varys adopted a mournful expression. Indeed we have. Pycelle sputtered to life like the old windbag he was, doubtlessly realizing his position was in peril. No one could have anticipated the king leaving in the dead of night with such a meager guard. No one, Meriwether chimed in. Lord Denais has refused to give up Aerys. He's threatened to kill the king at the first sign of an assault. Connington slammed a fist against the table. As we cannot attack Duskendale directly, we have no choice but to besiege it. On that, Naruto found himself agreeing with the red-headed knight-turned lord. At least then they would see the matter contained, if not necessarily solved. Lord Darkland was probably convinced that it was only a matter of time until Tywin would offer better terms. Foolish of him. Father didn't negotiate with fools, least of all those who kidnapped kings. Perhaps there is another way, Chelstead's reedy voice interjected. Why not simply give Lord Denais what he wants? It would be the quickest way to ensure the king's release. The small council fell silent. None of them had considered this clearly. On paper it seemed a soundly simple solution. All eyes turned to Tywin. No, he was swift to rebuff them with a stern word, but deigned to elaborate. We do not negotiate with kidnappers. If we do as Darkland demands, more lords will attempt this tactic. Connington, ever a proponent of rigor, thumped the table. Hear, hear, Varys nodded sagely. Indeed, it as you say. Pycelle murmured his assent. Meriwether, meanwhile, wrung his hands. But the king will be freed in the fullness of time. Tywin interjected. Have no doubt of that. Is that why you brought your butcher here? Connington jerked his chin toward Naruto, momentarily surprising him with his forthrightness. Here at last, Tywin paused. I beg your pardon? Varys tittered, doing nothing to hide his amusement. With all due respect, my lord, we know full well how Lord Nathaniel uprooted House Greyjoy and its allies for their ill-fated rebellion in the West. The drowning of the Greyjoys has grown quite popular among the bards these days. Root and stem, I believe the words were. Jaime provided with a bemused smirk. It's quite catchy. More than a few of the lords blanched at the lyrics. Naruto hid a smile behind a hand. From a logical point of view, he knew it was only natural for them to be concerned about him. Not his closeness with the queen, they weren't aware of that, but rather the way he reacted to uprisings as a whole. Strictly speaking, they were above him after all, if only in rank, not strength or skill. What truly mattered. As a ninja as Naruto Uzumaki, he was certain he could have mopped the floor with them without taking a hit. As Nathaniel Lannister, he was slightly less confident in such a perfect performance, but confident nonetheless if it came to a fight. Arthur Dane isn't here, he noted belatedly. He's probably guarding Rieger. Those two were always thick as thieves. As to the wrestler, I can kill everyone in this room if need be, anyone who stands against us. His gaze swifled to the Kingsguard, ignoring Jaime his brother would ever and always be on his side. But his gaze wasn't quite so kind as he considered Barristan and Hightower. They might give him some trouble if he fought fairly, but he had no intention of meeting either of them in a fair fight to begin with. His daggers were poisoned. It would take but a single cut, and eventually they would fall. We could have our coup here and now. It was a potent thought. Tempting, too. In one fell swoop, they'd take the city and bar the gates, leaving Rieger wherever he was locked out of his own city. Rayla would support it. She'd probably be delighted. Ares could die in Duskendale's dungeons for all he cared. Of course, the dissidents in the Red Keep would then need to be purged, and their own position fortified before they sent word to Casterly Rock. Lyanna and the ladies could then be brought over, and their dragons with them, and those dragons would bring the rest of the world to heel. He could see it now, the Bloody Lion, they would call him. Such an act would make him infamous, worse than Meager the Cruel. The Lannister name would forever be tainted with treachery for all time, but would that not be worth it to secure the realm once and for all? To stave off the madness of Ares and to a lesser extent that pompous fool Rieger? It sounded almost too good to be true. Was this father's plan? Was this what he wanted? Naruto's right hand drifted to his hidden dagger. Was it? Tywin noticed his half-lidded gaze and raised his voice. Nathaniel is merely here to learn from my example. Their eyes met for a moment, and Naruto heard the implicit warning therein. Not just yet, son. So not the plan, then. Damn. He hated walking on eggshells. My lords, Barristan offered his own suggestion into the sullen silence that followed. A frontal assault may be out of the question, but a lone man might slip into Duskendale unnoticed. If you manage a distraction, I might be able to effect a rescue. Naruto's brow shot into his hair. Very bad idea. The absolute last thing they wanted was Ares being rescued immediately. Barristan would never truly know it, but he came within an inch of dying that very moment. You will do no such thing. Tywin thankfully cut the knight's argument out at the legs before he could find another foot to stand on. I forbid you to take any such action until we ascertain the king's condition. I'll not lose another Kingsguard on a fool's farce. Barristan demurred with a frown. As you command. He'd probably obey. The man wasn't the sort to defy authority. Naruto resolved to have him watched regardless. Someday he might have to kill this noble man. He did not relish the thought. Agreed. Varys tutted, his words for Selmy and Hightower alike. My little birds tell me that 2 of your brothers already lie dead in Duskendale. The Kingsguard's numbers are running remarkably thin these days, aren't they? How many of your order remain now? 4, is it? His round face dimpled in a smile. Or perhaps 3, given Sir Arthur seems to have run off with the prince. We shall replenish those we have lost. The Lord Commander's gaze drifted to Naruto. A sword such as yours would be welcome among our ranks, Lord Nathaniel. Jaime jolted. Tywin twitched. A clever ploy, but ultimately ineffective. Naruto reassured them both with a single scoff. I refuse, Jaime chuckled ruefully. Wise choice, Barristan bristled. Do you mock the white cloaks, sir? No, Naruto thought inwardly, I mock you and your outdated precepts of honor. We're at war and you haven't even realized it. Honor won't save you in war. You'll bloody your hands all the same. It's a shame. We could have been such good friends, but you're too caught up in your morals to realize you're serving a monster. Not at all. Outwardly, however, he plastered a winningly limpid smile to his face and put on his best act yet. I simply have greater ambitions than mere knighthood and a duty to my people. He stepped closer to Jaime in a moment of solidarity, further driving his point home. You'll have to be content with my brother for now. For now. He let the words hang there in silent threat. That quelled the knight. Tywin was hand of the king. In Ares' absence, he spoke with the king's authority. If he so wished it, he could fly in the face of tradition and release Jaime from his vows, reducing the depleted Kingsguard numbers further still. That he hadn't yet done so implied he had a plan in place, perhaps a plan for him, or... Enough! Tywin looked to Varys, distracting him from his thoughts. Can your little birds find their way into Duskendale? The Master of Whispers nodded. They can, my lord. Excellent. Merryweather, be a good man and fetch my quill and paper. From there the meeting dissolved into boring talk of spies and numbers and figures, talk of coin and ships and laws. Naruto listened with one ear, committing the details to memory, yet not particularly caring for them. It soon became abundantly clear that Ares wouldn't be freed today. Perhaps he never would. Whatever Tywin's plan was, Naruto Nathaniel found he wasn't privy to it. Perhaps that was for the best. Ignorance was bliss, and he'd likely learn his place in the grand scheme sooner rather than later. In the end, the meeting burned through the better part of the day. The sun hung low in the sky by the time the small council was dismissed for the evening, but not before being informed that the next meeting, and every other hence, would held be in the Tower of the Hand. There were a few grumbles about that, but Tywin's authority prevailed once more. Surprisingly, he bid Jaime to stay but let him leave. Naruto found himself glad of it. In truth, his head was already full to bursting with plots and schemes. His family could concoct another one without him. Right now he only wished to see. Might I have a moment of your time, my lord? ... It was not to be. Now what? His right fist swung out and impacted a nearby wall with an audible crack of sound to leave a visible crater in its wake. Startled servants scurried around him, seeking safety. Naruto ignored them all. Stoically he stood his ground, took a deep breath to center himself, and plastered what he hoped was a believable smile onto his face. He was so close now, Rayla's room was just around the corner. And yet, interruptions, constant. Infuriating, persistent. No more delays after this. I have to see her. I'm losing my patience. He took one last breath to freeze the fire burning in his heart, let it smolder down to cinders. Only then did he dare pivot on his right heel, reluctantly rounding on the speaker in question. Calm, he told himself. Breathe. He did want a word with them, he simply hadn't thought it would be this soon. Let's get this over with. He wasn't surprised to find Varys waiting for him. To his credit, the Master of Whispers didn't smile. He must have known he'd inadvertently irked him just now. My apologies. Hands in his sleeves, he sketched a brief bow. I see I've caught you at a bad time. You must be tired from your journey, perhaps tomorrow, no. Naruto had to force the word through the grit teeth of his false smile. I've been meaning to have a word you. He stalked past the eunuch, fists clenched at his sides. Walk with me? Varys did. Together they adjourned in the spymaster's chamber on the other side of the keep, well away from the queen's chambers. Naruto took stock of it at a glance, noting the bed in the far corner of the wall, well away from the windows. More red walls. It wasn't simply the stone of the keep itself. The king apparently enjoyed the color far too much and had his artisans paint over it in places, leaving some rooms like this one a lurid shade of scarlet that hurt his eyes. Colors aside, it was a comfortable space, if a tad smaller than he was accustomed to. He didn't fail to notice a number of crates piled near the southern edge of the room by the man's bed either. Curious. As expected, in the center of the room stood a small wooden table replete with 2 seats and a bottle of wine paired with 2 goblets. Evidently he'd prepared for this meeting some time ago. Varys reached the table first and poured for both of them, perhaps hoping to use the drink to cool his temper. A vintage from the days of the Blackfire rebellions. Do you partake? Naruto noted the words, sat first, and retrieved a goblet, idly meeting his gaze as he swirled the wine within. On occasion. Sweeter than he'd expected. Not bad. That said, if Varys he was hoping to poison him, one never knew in King's Landing he'd be sorely disappointed. He was immune. Varys finally claimed his own seat. You'll be pleased to know our mutual friend is doing quite well these days. Clever. He timed his words well just as he drank, the better to gauge his reaction. Very clever. Well played. You've been at this game longer than me, but I've had a better teacher. He took a deliberately deep drink to mask his smile. Is she now? Quite so, Varys hummed, cagey as ever. Naruto took another drink. You have my thanks for your support with the small council. Varys chuckled. Nasty business, that. The dragons do seem to have rather poor luck these days, don't they? Naruto didn't rise to the bait. He didn't entirely trust the man, but neither did he actively dislike him either. He was, by Rayla's own accounting and their shared dreams, a friend. Excluding that nasty business with little Viserys, if it was indeed him. He had no proof, but he suspected. He could have sold her out to Ares years ago, but instead protected her as best he could, and even enabled her to send messages to him before he figured out his dream-walking jutsu in the first place. Yes, by all accounts an ally, but he'd been let down by allies before. Back then, I was a fool being led by fools, he muttered under his breath. Varys noticed and mistook his words for something else. You don't trust the small council, then? Not untrue, that. Naruto held out his now empty goblet, silently asking for more as he spoke. They have a reputation for serving their own interests above the realm. I intend to keep their daggers far from my father. Spoken like a loyal son, he frowned. I am. Naturally. What was he up to? If thought to test his loyalty to his family, he'd be in for a surprise. A short, sharp surprise delivered via dagger. Power is a curious thing, my lord, Varys said suddenly, apropos of nothing. Without warning, he leaned forward with a wry smile. Are you fond of riddles? Naruto wore a grimace as leaned back. Why, am I about to hear one? Evidently so. Varys mirrored the motion and steepled his fingers atop the table. 3 great men sit in a room. A king, a priest, and a rich man. Between them stands a common sellsword. Each great man bids said sellsword kill the other 2. Who lives? Who dies? Tyrion loved riddles. He would have said it depends on the sellsword. After all, most sellswords had neither crown nor gold nor favor with the gods. Yet he had a weapon, while the other 3 did not, which for that moment gave him the power of life and death. In the end, he said as much. Varys' smile told him he had answered poorly. But if it's swordsmen who rule, then why do we pretend kinds hold all the power? When Ares lost his sense and went to Duskendale, who was truly responsible for allowing him to go? The Kingsguard, the prince, or something else? I must confess I fare rather poorly with riddles. The spymaster chuckled. Yes, your talents tend elsewhere, don't they? The point I make this, power resides where men believe it resides. It's a trick, a shadow on the wall. He rolled his eyes, perhaps recalling some distant memory only he was privy to. And you cast a very large shadow these days. Do I now? Naruto scoffed into his wine. I'm not half as smart as Tyrion. Varys blinked, momentarily at a loss for the first time since they'd met. Who, my lord? He granted him a wry grin in a return. My little brother. He would have solved your riddle in a heartbeat. The spymaster seemed a touch intrigued by that. Then I should very much like to meet him someday. In the meantime, I understand you have a habit of collecting rather eccentric pets. Naruto went still. He didn't know how Varys had found out, only that he did. Deny, tell him nothing, not a single blood word. I haven't the foggiest idea what you mean. Varys pulled a disappointed face, already seeing through the lie. Is that so? A pity. I had a gift for you. So speaking, he rose, strode over the crate he'd seen before, and plucked a nearby iron rod from the floor beside it. Naruto craned his neck and watched, utterly flabbergasted. What was he up to? He didn't wait long for answers. In short order, Varys wedged his temporary tool beneath the crate's lid and used it to pry the heavy wooden box open with a series of quick, practiced motions. Its lid parted with nary a noise, allowing the eunuch to lift the wooden frame and peer inside, but warily, as if he half expected the contents within to rear up and bite him. Good, when it did not, he tutted to himself at length, nodding once in apparent satisfaction. Just as it was. At length he glanced back at him. Won't you have a look, Lord Nathaniel? Naruto remained where he was. I don't think that's a good idea. It's hardly going to bite you. Ain't the bitten I'm worried about. He slipped back into his old manner of speech for a moment. Varys stared at him expectantly. With an exasperated sigh, the whiskered warrior righted himself, rose from his chair and crept over warily, to inspect the eunuch's prize. He couldn't see it, not at first, but as he edged closer, his faith was rewarded. Sure enough, there, nestled neatly amidst a pile of warm hay, it lay, warm as a summer's day. A dragon egg. It was a large thing, mottled blue-gray mixed with a color caught somewhere between gold on green. It wasn't fake. Truth be told, he'd suspected it would be some at that. Flagrant forgery meant to win him over. Now he inhaled reflexively once he realized it wasn't. No, he could sense life stirring within its sturdy confines. A large soul housed in a tiny body, ready to burst into life at the slightest provocation. One of the 9 was undoubtedly trapped within that egg, and by its coloration, he had an inkling as to whom. He glared at Varys. Where did you get this? Many things fall into my web these days, my lord. The spider planted both hands in his sleeves once more, as though afraid to touch the egg himself, and granted him a gracious brow. This one cost a rather hefty sum to extricate. The queen is also rather well known for collecting curiosities of late as well. One could say I procured to this at her request. He hadn't, of course, but it was still a useful excuse should it ever be found in his possession. Such an excuse might well save his life. Would you like to hold it? Bad idea. Very bad idea, all the very bad ideas. If that little bastard hatched here and now, he'd have some explaining to do. Moreover, a chirpy baby dragon would be hell's to hide. And yet, he gripped his right wrist with his left hand, lest it betray him. A disbelieving laugh leapt from his lips. Does Rieger know about this? No. Varys was sober, succinct, and moreover, not one for small talk at the moment. As his current egg has yet to hatch, I saw little point in informing him. Naruto felt a fiery flash of triumph at that. He was particularly proud of that ruse. Son Goku remained safe with Lyanna, far from King's Landing. With this little one under his watchful eye that left only three-tailed beasts or dragons now, he supposed yet unaccounted for. Supposedly Euron knew of at least one, a secret the wily Greyjoy had clung tight to since their alliance first sprung up 2 years ago. Now that madman had gone rooting about in the ruins of old Valyra. At his behest and there was no telling when he'd return. Still to find another egg here of all places. What were the chances? Slim to none, that's what. He didn't know whether the gods of this world hated him, loved him, or simply enjoyed making mischief for him. Varys coughed pointedly behind him, breaking the spell. I believe we can dispense with the secrets now, yes. Naruto laid a hand on the egg, ready to slam the crate's lid shut at the slightest sign of movement. Warm, but inert. The tailed beast within stirred, but sleepily, lost in its dream. It wouldn't wake for him unless he forced it to, and he had no intention of doing so. Thank the sage for small mercies. But to have the egg in King's Landing at all was a terrible risk, akin to a primed explosive tag just waiting to detonate. A grimace tugged at the corner of his mouth. I suppose you want to sell it to me? Varys scoffed. Perish the thought. Consider it my gift to you. Naruto granted him an incredulous look. Why, what do you gain from this? Trust, I would hope. The man inclined his head, jowled face unusually stern for once. I know you do not truly think of me as a friend. Indeed, you would be a fool to do so early in the game. But be assured, my lord, I am an ally to your cause, through and through. He gestured to the egg. I can think of no better way to win your goodwill. I despise magic and all those who practice it, but even I cannot deny that a growing dragon will be useful in ridding the realm of Ares and his ilk. Pleasing words, but he had yet to truly sound out his loyalties, even if he hadn't sensed a lie yet. And what of Rieger? Here at last, a rare look of scorn crossed the visage of Varys. A fanciful fool in prince's clothing, a well-meaning fool perhaps, but a fool nonetheless. He may be loved by the small folk at the moment, but he would upend the realm in an instant in pursuit of prophecy. No, he cannot be allowed to rule any more than his father. That burden must fall to another, one who has proven herself sound of mind and heart, despite the woe her family continually inflicts upon her. With a capable husband by her side, such a ruler would make for a magnificent monarch. Rayla. He was talking about Rayla. Their eyes met and a knot came uncoiled in Naruto's chest. Varys was telling the truth. He genuinely believed those words. There was only one more question he need ask. Trust aside, what's your goal here? A bold question. Suffice to say, I seek only the safety and stability of the realm, be it under the lion or the dragon. Another truth, and by far the most important one yet. That was all he needed to know. Even then, it took a serious effort on his part to release the egg. Varys noted his restraint with some approval. Your wisdom does you credit. Perhaps someday, when our friendship is older, I shall tell you the story of how I was cut. But for now, I will say this. Influence grows like a weed. I tended mine patiently until its tendrils wrapped around all of King's Landing and much of Westeros besides. You have tended yours as well in your own way. He granted the last part to him with a nod. And now the realm knows of your exploits. As such, I have no doubt what you want will be yours in time, provided you have the stomach for it. Naruto considered those words, ominous though they were. He looked back to the egg. An idea dawned. The hour was late, most late indeed. So too was Nathaniel Lannister, terribly, horribly late. Rayla had waited patiently for her beloved, oh so patiently, but now that patience was nearing its end. She had watched from her window as the column of Lannister banners arrived at the gates and were welcomed into the Red Keep. She'd seen 2 figures standing at the head of that column, and she just knew that he had come for her. Oh, how her heart had fluttered then. Yet as the hours dragged by, her long-lost love failed to make an appearance. She sent servants to subtly inquire as to the status of the keep's guests, only to be informed that there was a meeting of the small council in progress. Even after said meeting ended, Nathaniel was nowhere to be found. One of them informed her that he had been seen walking with Lord Varys. He was here, yet he hadn't come to her. Why? Anxiety gnawed at her heart like an apple's worm. Most of the day passed and still nothing. When the sun set, so too did her hopes, and with the waning light her spirit sank into darkness. Questions began to abound in her mind one after another, each more painful than the last. Why had he not come to her? Why hadn't she seen him in her dreams for the last year? Had he not received her missive? Had he given up on her? Forsaken her? Soon her mood soured, and she sent her handmaidens away for the evening, wishing to be alone. She began nursing a bottle of wine. Without the goblets she had no need for decorum in her own private chambers, but that only made her melancholy, and the bitter taste upset her stomach. Late, late, late. Where had he gone this time? Where was her lion? Sullenly she kicked at her bed and buried her face in her pillows to no avail. No one heard her. No one came. She was alone with naught but her own thoughts for company. Her eyes began to sting, threatening angry tears. But she knew if she started crying, she would never stop. In the end, she changed into her pale nightgown and resigned herself to another sleepless night, alone with naught but her fingers to slake her desire. Come the dawn, she would track that lazy Lannister down and have WORDS tap tap tap. Someone knocked on her door, dispelling her dark thoughts like so much morning mist before a warm breeze. Rayla jolted upright from where she lounged in her bed, hurriedly checked her reflection in the mirror, hoped against hope, and tried not to panic. "Who goes there?" Sir James, having the night watch, answered readily enough. "Nathaniel Lannister, your grace." Her heart leaped into her throat, performed a cartwheel there, and stuck the landing. "Naruto, so late, be still my heart." Rayla forced herself to face her fears with a stiff upper lip. "Enter," credit where it was due. James obeyed her command without question and did just that. The door eased open. Wait, why was she the one blushing? There he was. Gods, but he'd grown even more handsome since she'd seen him last. He was truly a young man now. His eyes widened ever so slightly at the sight of her, while hers raked over every inch of him like the fine feast he was. As ever, he wore the traditional colors of his house. But for some reason, he held an odd satchel of sorts slung over his shoulder, the strap of which he held tight in his right hand. It marred what would have otherwise been an impeccable look. Whatever was he up to now? No, never mind that. Future husband. Mine. She glanced at James and mustered her best queenly mien. "You did well to see him in, Sir James. We have matters of great import to discuss. No one is to disturb us upon penalty of death. Your queen commands it." James looked between the two of them and nodded, a knowing gleam in his eye, the smallest of smiles tugging at his lips. "As you say, your grace." Then he winked Nathaniel's way. "Good luck, little brother." James. With but a chuckle, he closed the door behind him and stood guard. He at least could be trusted to hold his tongue, unlike everyone else. Oh gods, they might have mere moments at best. Rayla took a breath and inched forward. "My love, is that really you?" Naruto held up a hand to forestall her approach, placing a finger over his lips for silence. Then he pulled something out of his satchel. Rayla frowned, watching him turn and apply something to the wall near the door. Several somethings, actually. "What are you doing?" "Silencing seals." Her frown deepened, momentarily put out by his lack of explanation. "I do not understand." He winked at her as he finished applying them. "They muffle noise." Heat rose in her cheeks. Well then, whatever they were, they faded into obscurity the moment his hand left them alone, as though they'd never existed at all. If she hadn't been looking straight at the ancient script as it vanished, she wouldn't have known it was there in the first place. In the end, took him the better part of a minute and agonizing 60 seconds to fully apply them all. She even watched him walk his way up the ceiling and walls to make wholly certain the room was covered from all angles. At length he finished, dusted himself down, and dropped back to the floor. "There." He turned a wry smile on her. "We should be." Rayla launched herself at him. Credit where it was due, Nathaniel Naruto met her halfway with a startled laugh. Several things happened at once. First, he caught her by the hips, spun her around to bleed off momentum, took her into his arms, then pulled her close until their foreheads collided. Gently, thankfully. The moment he touched her, she snuggled closer, eager to get at him, to have him in her arms and hold him tight. This close she caught his scent, and it was just as she remembered in her dreams. He smelled faintly of fire and sunlight. Maybe it had something to do with him rejuvenating her, but she couldn't get enough of it, nor him. She touched his face with both hands, fingers trailing over his visage, marveling at him, at the tactile sensation of him beneath her hands. "You're real, aren't you?" Words babbled out of her one after the other. "Tell me I'm not still dreaming." He took her fingers in hand and kissed the back of her knuckles. "Does that answer your question?" She felt that. A tremulous smile broke out across her face. With it, the tears finally broke free from her eyes, tumbled down her cheeks. "My lion, you're late, so very late." He winked her way and dared a dashing smile, the absolute rapscallion. Better late than never, Rayla pouted and thumped his chest. No, better early than not at all. You kept me waiting. He laughed at that, and belatedly Rayla realized she was as well. Her eyes flicked up to his, then lower to his lips. His hands fell back to her hips and intensified their grip there ever so slightly. He pulled her closer, and almost unconsciously she found herself looping both arms behind his neck, the better to draw him in against her and press her full bosom against his chest, subtly grinding her hips against his. Someone moved first. Rayla didn't care who, only that somebody did. Her mouth met his, and that was that. She stopped caring about anything beyond mutual pleasure and getting him to her bed. Once there, she pushed him down onto the feather bed. With a possessive snarl, she dove down and kissed him again. Let him wrap an arm around her waist, but moved his free hand to her rightmost breast, urging him to caress her through the thin fabric of her nightgown. Because she wanted to be touched, and she needed this. It had been so long since she'd willingly kissed a man, let alone allowed herself to be held by one since she had her youth returned to her. It was everything she wanted, and more, but not enough. Clothes, too many clothes. She wanted to be atop him. Not just like this with the two of them fumbling at one another, but skin to skin as she rode him into oblivion and beyond. Any daughter or son she had would be of him and no other. She craved that, the certainty of sex, the warm pleasure of falling asleep in her beloved's arms. Her hands found the buttons of his tunic and tugged them apart, then made to remove the satchel still draped about his shoulder. Wait. Naruto broke their kiss and held up a hand before she could remove it. Not yet, but why? She hated how needy she sounded in that moment, how desperate she must seem for him. Haven't we waited long enough? It's not that. His smile was nervous. I have a gift for you, and I know I'll be too tired to remember it later. Desire warred with curiosity. A gift for her name day. He knew what was approaching. What is it? She asked. Taking one hand from hers, he reached back into his satchel. Power. Rayla peered at him as he did so, more silencing seals, but though he already? Oh my goodness. Her brain briefly blanked, and hands flew to her face as her long-lost love withdrew the item in question, then presented it to her. A large dragon egg of mottled bluish-gray mixed with a golden green. She had no doubt at all that it was for her, just as she had a foreboding feeling as to what would happen when she touched it. She shouldn't. This wouldn't simply destabilize Ares' rotten reign already on its last leg. This would ruin Rieger. It would be a true betrayal of her family in its fiercest form. A lifetime ago, she would have hesitated. Now, Rayla reached out like an eager girl, cupping her newfound prize in her palms. She felt the heartbeat within and was humbled by it, the enormity of the gift that was being given to her. She didn't dare move as Naruto laid his hands over hers, closed his eyes, and mumbled something under his breath. Whatever it was, it worked. She felt a pulse of energy pass through their intertwined fingers and into the egg's shell. The entire thing trembled in her grasp. It was her only warning. And then it hatched in her hands. A gorgeous dragon hatchling burst from the egg, bearing gray-blue scales blending into golden amber and with 6 wings, 3 to each side alongside a single tail. It reeled for a moment to shake itself free of the egg's eye-core, blinked its golden-green eyes, then arched its little neck back and hollered up at the ceiling. Miraculously, her mind instantly intuited a single word behind that thin, reedy cry. Freedom! Rayla laughed incredulously. Hello, little one. She didn't miss Naruto's hum of triumph as his arm encircled her shoulders. Long time no see, Chomai.